Hi there. Welcome to a brand new project in the Bible in a Year Live series. We are beginning the book of Enoch today. The book of Enoch, as you would have learned in our last post, has 5 books in it. And today we'll be starting book 1, The Watchers. Chapter 1, The Words of the Blessing of Enoch. The words of the blessing of Enoch, wherewith he blessed the elect and the righteous, who will be living in the days of tribulation, when all the wicked and godless are to be removed. And Enoch, a righteous man whose eyes were opened by God, took up his parable and said, I saw the vision of the Holy One in the heavens, which the angel showed me, and from them I heard everything, and from them I understood as I saw, but not for this generation, but for a remote one which is for to come. Concerning the elect I said, and took up my parable concerning them. The Holy Great One will come forth from his dwelling, and the eternal God will tread upon the earth, even on Mount Sinai, and will appear in the strength of his might from the heaven of heavens. And all shall be smitten with fear, and the waters shall wake, and great fear and trembling shall seize them unto the ends of the earth. And the high mountains shall be shaken, and the high hills shall be made low, and shall melt like wax before the flame. And the earth shall be wholly rent in sunder, and all that is upon the earth shall perish, and there shall be a judgment upon all. But with the righteous he will make peace, and will protect the elect, and mercy shall be upon them, and they shall all belong to God, and they shall be prospered, and they shall all be blessed. And he will help them all, and light shall appear unto them, and he will make peace with them. And behold, he cometh with 10,000s of his holy ones, to execute judgment upon all, and to destroy all the ungodly, and to convict all flesh of all the works of their ungodliness, which they have ungodly committed, and of all the hard things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Chapter 2, The Creation. Observe ye everything that takes place in the heaven, how they do not change their orbits, and the luminaries which are in the heaven, how they all rise and set in order, each in its season, and transgress not against their appointed order. Behold ye the earth, and give heed to the things which take place upon it from first to last. How steadfast they are, how none of the things upon earth change, but all the works of God appear to you. Behold, the summer and the winter, how the whole earth is filled with water and clouds, and dew and rain lie upon it. Observe and see how in the winter all the trees seem as though they had withered, and shred all their trees, except 14 trees, which do not lose their foliage, but retain the old foliage from 2 to 3 years till the new comes. And again, observe ye the days of summer, how the sun is above the earth over against it, and you seek shade and shelter by reason of the heat of the sun, and the earth also burns with growing heat, and so you cannot tread on the earth or on the rock by reason of its heat. Observe ye how the trees cover themselves with green leaves and bear fruit. Wherefore give ye heed, and know with regard to all his works, and recognize how he that liveth for ever hath made them so. And all his works go on thus from year to year forever, and all the tasks which they accomplish for him, and their tasks change not, but according as God hath ordained, so it is done. And behold, how the sea and the rivers in like manner accomplish and change not their tasks from his commandments. But ye have not been steadfast, nor done the commandments of the Lord. But ye have turned away and spoken proud and hard words with your impure mouths against his greatness. O ye hard hearted, ye shall find no peace. Therefore shall ye execrate your days, and the years of your life shall perish, and the years of your destruction shall be multiplied in eternal abomination, and ye shall find no mercy. In those days ye shall make your names an eternal abomination unto all the righteous, and by you shall all who curse. All the sinners and godless shall imprecate by you, and for you, the godless, there shall be a curse. And all the righteous shall rejoice, and there shall be forgiveness of sins, and every mercy and peace and forbearance. there shall be salvation unto them, a godly light. And for all of you sinners, there shall be no salvation, but on you all shall abide the curse of the beast. But for the elect, there shall be light and joy and peace, and they shall inherit the earth. And then there shall be bestowed upon the elect wisdom, and they shall all live and never again sin, either through ungodliness or through pride. But they who are wise shall be humble. And they shall not again transgress, nor shall they sin all the days of their lives, nor shall they die of anger or wrath, but they shall complete to the number of the days of their life. And their lives shall be increased in peace, and the years of their joy shall be multiplied in eternal gladness and peace all the days of their life. Chapter 3, Fallen Angels. And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of the heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. And Semjaza, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear ye will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said, Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Then sware they all together, and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And they were in all 200, who descended in the days of Jared on the mountain of Mount Hermon, and they called it Mount Hermon, because they had sworn and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And these are the names of their leaders: Sam Laza, their leader, Araklaba, Ralmeel, Kokableb, Tamlel, Ramlem, Danel, Ezekiel, Barakijal, Asael, Armoros, Batarel, Anael, Zaklel, Samsapil, Satarel, Turel, Jomjael, Sariel. These are their chiefs of tens. And all the others together with them took unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself one, and they began to go in unto them, and to defile themselves with them. And they taught them charms and enchantments, and the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose heights were 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. And they began to sin against birds and beasts, and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. Then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. Semjaza taught enchantments and roots cuttings. Armaros, the resolving of enchantments. Barakijal taught astrology. Kokabel, the constellations. Ezekiel, the knowledge of the clouds. Arakel, the signs of the earth. Shamsiel, the sign of the sun. And Sariel, the course of the moon. And as men perished, they cried, and their cry went up to heaven.
Genesis 5:23 says, Altogether Enoch lived a total of 365 years. Very interesting. The same amount of days in our Georgian calendar. Anyways, Enoch walked faithfully with God, then he was no more because God took him away. And it seems like immediately the narrative in Enoch starts exactly right there. It picks up from that and expands it and says that Enoch was a righteous man and his eyes were opened by God. And God showed him all these things, which is the first interesting thing that I see. Now I'm just going to give some reflections, small reflections on the things that I'm seeing. I'm sure there's a lot more here that could be spoken about, but just want to highlight a few things so that we can keep that in our mind when we read our Bibles. There are three major things that stand out to me, and I guess might be important for us to take note of. The first section talks about what Enoch's mission is about. It seems that he's a prophet of God. And as we read, we'll probably see that it seems like he's a prophet of God to these beings, in a sense. We also see where he says the things that he is recording are for a generation that is remote and far away to come. And based on the Bible, we understand that Enoch is living and in a time about 1,500 to 2,000 years before Abraham, which is also known as a pre-flood period, which will be very important for us to keep in our minds as we continue to read. It's interesting to kind of think about what is this remote generation that he's talking about. He does mention that the remote generation is one that will go through the tribulation. So I want to say that that generation is either living now or is not too far off from us. We are about almost 6,000 years removed from Enoch, if I'm doing my math correctly. And then in this first section in chapter 1, we see a quote that is mentioned in the Bible in Jude, where it's verse 9 of chapter 1. He says, "And behold, he cometh with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment upon all, and to destroy all the ungodly, and to convict all flesh of all the works of their ungodliness, which they have ungodly committed, and for all the hard things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him." Which a lot of this sounds like what Revelation talks about, and like the final judgment, or in the time when judgment is being taken place in its various forms. I'm using judgment as an umbrella word for all the events that take place in Revelations. And in chapter 1 of the book of Enoch, it seems like Enoch is speaking about that, or he's speaking to that. Then we get to chapter 2, which is a version of the creation story. I think one of the things that I've come to understand is that Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2 are two separate accounts of the creation story. I guess almost like when we're reading the Gospels, and we have the Gospel of Matthew, the Gospel of Mark, and the Gospel of Luke, and the Gospel of John, which they're all talking about the gospel of Jesus Christ, but from different perspectives in a sense. Genesis 1 is one perspective of creation. Genesis 2 is one perspective of creation, and it seems like Enoch chapter 2 is another perspective of creation. Not conflicting perspectives, but three different vantage points that when we read them all together, we can get a fuller understanding of what creation must have been like. The verse that jumps out at me the most is verse 6 of chapter 2 in the book of Enoch that says, "And all his works go on thus from year to year forever, and all the tasks which they accomplish for him, and their tasks change not, but according as God hath ordained, so it is done." That one jumps out to me because it sounds very similar to some passages in the Bible that talk about how creation is obedient to God. Job chapter 38, verse 8 to 11 says, "Who shut up the sea behind doors when it bursts?" And this is talking about God. "Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb, when I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness, and when I fixed limits for it and set its doors and bars in place, when I said, this far you may come and no further. Here is where your proud waves halt." So that's God commanding the sea, and the sea is obedient. And then Proverbs chapter 8, verse 27 to 29 says, "I was there when he set the foundations in place." This is wisdom talking about God creating. And it says, "When he marked out the horizon on the face of the deep, when he established the clouds above and fixed securely the fountains of the deep, when he gave the sea its boundary, so the waters would not overstep his command, and when he marked out the foundations of the earth." There again, we see this obedience that creation follows as God gives it commands. And as mighty as the creation and the sea and that kind of thing is, it's obedient to God. So that's an account of creation. And then the last thing we see in chapter 3 is an expansion of Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 to 3, where it says, human beings began to increase in number on the earth, and daughters were born to them. The sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. And it seems like Enoch is now giving us more context to what that verse is saying. And if we can take Enoch's words as true, I think it helps us to have a bigger understanding of why these angels were wrong, and what they did was rebellious. Enoch mentions the act as being defiling. And I guess on top of that, they also taught the human beings many different things that they probably shouldn't have. And I know there's an understanding that a part of them teaching the humans these things, it kind of made the humans worship them as the gods of these various things. So when you dabble into like Greek mythology, or you just read the Bible and you see some of the things that the Bible talks about, different kinds of gods like the sun god and the god of gold and metals and woods and stuff like that. These fallen angels teaching the humans these different skills probably ties in with that idea where the one that taught one is that the god of that, and the one that taught another thing is the god of that. And I use the word God not to have any kind of equality to Yahweh. You know, the Bible talks about false gods and or idols, but Yahweh is the God of gods, or the King of kings, the Lord of lords. This is why he is the God above all gods, and everything else is subject and falls under his sovereignty. So we'll pause here for today, and then we'll pick up tomorrow in chapter 4 of the book of Enoch and see what we can learn about the Most High God. I want to encourage us that even as we read this, one of the things that should be strong on our minds is, what can we learn about the Most High God? How can we learn about him more and more? One of my favorite verses in the Bible is John 17, verse 3, that says, now this is eternal life, that they know you, the Father, the only true God, and Jesus Christ also, whom you have sent. So the whole goal, I think, of everything that God allows us to interact with, all the knowledge that he gives us, is for us to know who he is. Because when somebody truly knows who God is, then they will truly serve him, because they'll realize who he is versus who they are, and God will get all the glory. So may God be glorified by this effort. May God be glorified by our lives as we come to know him more and seek to know him. Blessings.